Welcome back to our growing experiment. We're here with Dan from Espanola Coffee Roasters. Dan, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name's Dan Mascott. I'm 39 years old. I live in Espanola. I'm an electrician at Domtar, and I wanted to do a little side business with something I loved, which was coffee. So I decided in 2016, I decided to start a little business and bought a little roaster. Yeah, it was actually earlier, probably about 8 years before that, I had bought like a tiny home roaster, and I've been doing that on my own. And then later on, when I decided to start a business, I bought like a 1 kilo roaster,
Mhm.
1 kilo capacity. And then from there, just kind of started the business, and it's been growing ever since. Now I'm up to a 10 kilo roaster. So yeah, that's kind of the basics of it.
Okay. So
Yeah.
when you got started with that there, I'm guessing because you buy the roaster, you must be you source the beans directly from source and then you roast them up yourself from there.
Yeah, well, I had made contact with an importer out in BC. They deal in specialty, like the specialty end of coffee, which I can go into a little bit more after to clarify what that means. Yeah, I started out, I was trying to find an importer that would sell me like one sack of coffee, and a lot of them would sell more than that. So they needed a minimum order. So I ended up connecting with this guy, and yeah, we've been with them ever since. And now I have, I don't know, 30 sacks of coffee in here now. I'm in my roastery right now, so if you see me looking around, it's
Okay. And
Yeah.
so when you get started in that, you said specialty coffee. So I'm guessing that's different from regular coffee. What makes that different?
Yeah, well, it's just they're taking more care in growing the coffee, and there's different ways to ensure that your coffee is higher quality. One example of it is, um, just when you go, well, I have to start back a little bit further, just in case people don't know exactly what coffee is. So, coffee is actually the seed of a cherry. So they got all these coffee trees growing in the farms, and they literally go and pick them by hand. And each coffee seed or coffee bean is the seed of a cherry, and there's two of them inside of the cherry. So um, yeah, it's handpicked. It's quite an endeavor. Um, so you could tell, like, if you think of strawberries or something like that, if you go through and you pick all the strawberries at one time, you're going to get underripe, you're going to get ripe, you're going to get rotten. So that wouldn't really taste very good in a pie. So that's kind of my best analogy. So you'll get the pickers and farmers going through and picking just the ripe cherries, and then once they're done with that, they process them, and then they go back and do another round. So generally in like commodity coffee or non-specialty, they might do one or two pickings of that, whereas in specialty you're going to be around like 8 or 9 passes. So just takes a lot more time, a lot more effort, and they're just ensuring that you're getting the ripe cherries, which translates into better flavor once you roast it. So that's kind of the basics of what specialty is, or what makes a difference there.
Yeah, that's
So,
really interesting.
I'm
I didn't know
assuming,
that it came in like a cherry like that. I don't know. I figured, I
yeah,
guess it grew like the beans and the beans were dried out and that's why they look the way they look.
yeah, no, exactly, and that's like one of the few agricultural products that are grown just to harvest their seeds. Like, you literally, can you imagine getting a peach and then ripping all the peach off, throwing it away, and taking the seed?
Yeah.
So yeah. So yeah, and then it's like the beans are flat on one side, so they actually sit like this inside the cherry. And then when they come off, there are two in there.
Okay.
Of course, there are exceptions to everything, right? But you got
Right.
a pea berry, which is one seed, but it's a lot smaller, so they never separated. And they generally say that there's more flavor in those, but they're harder to get.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then when you started picking out like sort of the kind of coffee you wanted to start roasting, is there something in particular you started with? I'm guessing probably based on your preference.
Yeah, well, and obviously Colombia is one of the first names that come to people's mind when you think of coffee. So that was one of the first ones I started with. And then you just kind of expand from there. Hey, I'm going to try out a bag of this next time. And you get it and you try it. And there's all kinds of different flavor characteristics and profiles from different coffees from different parts of the world, and based on the process as well. So we can get into some of the processing methods if you want to.
Yeah, sure.
Like
That makes me think right away of like say dark roast, medium roast, light roast. So what's the real difference in that?
Yeah, well, basically just how long you're roasting it. So a lighter roast, there's a certain point in the roast where the coffee has moisture in the bean and then it expands and it pops, just kind of like popcorn. So up until that point, you can't really drink it. It's too sour and has some negative flavors to it. But once it goes into first crack, then you're into the light roast end of things. So we have some of our light roasts we do, which are about, you can go into about a minute into first crack, which is pretty light. And then some of it goes like into the darker roast, you're like 4 or 5, well, not 5, but 4 and a bit maybe minutes into first crack, where you're finally into the dark roast end of things. So you're literally just cooking it longer. So there's different points along that spectrum that will give you different flavors. So yeah, it's the possibilities are endless.
Right. So when you say do like a dark roast versus a light roast, is there any other characteristics it'll change other than just the flavor, or is there say a difference in the caffeine levels or anything like that?
Yeah, well, it's mostly flavor and you'll get the size. So the lighter the coffee, the smaller it is. As it gets darker and roasts longer, it expands a little bit more. So, I mean, that's just a minor characteristic, but um, no, the caffeine, there's been all kinds of different things that have been thought, like lighter coffee is more caffeinated, darker coffee is more caffeinated, but the most recent thing that I've heard is that the caffeine doesn't break down based on roast. So technically, the caffeine stays the same, but as the beans get darker, they get lighter as well. So say that you take 10 grams of a light roast and 10 grams of a dark roast. Well, there's going to be more beans in that 10 grams of dark roast. So you're going to have a little bit more caffeine. So that's literally the difference. So that's the most recent thing that I've read.
Okay.
And it kind of,
And
yeah.
I wonder, would there be probably a difference in your grind size? Like say, for example, with my machine that I use there, you can go for a fine or a coarser grind, right? And so would you
Yep.
say maybe that a light roast versus a dark roast, there's a different kind of grind consistency you would want?
Yeah, it wouldn't be, the factor would be more in like how you're brewing it rather than what roast level is. Like obviously the roast level will affect it. If you're going to do a dark espresso as opposed to a light espresso, it's going to change a little bit, but the brewing method itself is going to be the kind of the determining factor. Because obviously espresso is super fine. You can't really go too coarse with that, even if it's a dark or a light roast. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because on my machine there, that's what I'll make is espressos, and then I'll make like Americanos out of them. And
Yep.
there's an adjustment on there for fine or coarse. And I've noticed in using different beans from different places, I'll have to adjust the fineness or the coarseness. Otherwise, it'll mess up the pressure on my espresso. And so I just wondered if
Exactly.
maybe like a lighter ground bean, because there's more of it's intact, say that it would work better with say a finer grind than a coarser grind or whatever.
No, that's exactly right. So because the structure of the coffee is broke down more as you go darker, it's a little harder to extract the light roast. So you'd have to go a touch finer with it and just kind of finesse that a little bit and get it to where it tastes good. So yeah,
Okay.
you're exactly right on that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So when
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole if you really want to go down there.
well, so when you really started getting into it, how did you start? So like I imagine like everyone, you probably your first cup of coffee must have been something like a Maxwell House or a Folger, and then you
Yeah.
really took a liking to it. So was it drinking black coffee? Were you into the espressos, the lattes? How'd you get started in that way?
Well, we're going way back now. So I mean, starting out, you're drinking just kind of whatever coffee, right? You don't know anything about it. It's just coffee. So my grandmother used to take me to the old A&P and get coffee beans and grind them at the store. So I guess that was kind of a little more coffee geekish than the average person. So that's kind of cool. Um, but then, yeah, as you go on, I had some of those other brands and didn't realize, I always felt like there was a difference, but didn't know what I was talking about with it. So then as you kind of grow, I used to in high school go to Toronto to visit my aunt, and she would take me to some higher end coffee shops that would roast their own, and I'd be like, oh yeah, you can tell the difference. And then I go back home where my parents had the coffee that they bought and just didn't taste the same. So that's, and then eventually you kind of start going down that rabbit hole. Like I said, it took a few years to get to that point, but so for myself, when I'm drinking coffee at home, I do brewed coffee, sometimes black, sometimes with cream and sugar, depends on how I'm feeling. Um, and I love espresso and lattes and stuff like that. So those are kind of my go-tos. Um, yeah,
Okay.
but
And then have you ever seen those French presses there? The idea behind
mhm.
those, I guess, is they're supposed to preserve more of the oils in the coffee because of the way they're doing the extraction. Is there any truth to that?
um, the oils itself, well, I guess it would be a byproduct of that process, but you're literally just extracting all the coffee. It's called an immersion brew. So you're immersing the coffee in the water, so it's soaking it, it's pulling everything out, and then whatever comes out ends up in your cup. Whereas um, other methods, you'll brew it and some stuff goes in, some stuff doesn't go in. So generally, you're going to get a more rich, kind of full-bodied coffee out of a French press because you're going to get more of the solids coming through too. Whereas something like a pour over, um, it's going to pick up those solids. It won't let them through, so it won't feel as much of a texture on your palate. So um, yeah, and some people love the French press. Some people don't like it. I I like the French press for sure. And if you take it one step further, you can actually filter it through like a cloth filter or something like that, and get rid of some of the. Some people like the foam that comes off of it, but some people don't. So kind of like it's not really crema, but it's kind of in the same ballpark.
Okay.
Crema, when you do the espresso, like it can be a bit bitter. So some people want to just get rid of that, but some people are those people are usually the real geeks,
Yeah,
like
that
like
definitely would
me.
be another level of finesse. Like me, like I like
Yeah.
I like the espresso and stuff for sure, but I'm really lucky. We got one of these
Revel.
Breville coffee machines that does the
Yeah.
grinding and the espresso kind of in the same machine there. And so it
Yeah.
makes it really easy to have an Americano every morning. And it's convenient too because it's
Exactly.
serving size, right? You just plug it in and you go. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's about as far as I go because I mean, otherwise, I mean, who knows how long you're spending in the morning before you can make a cup of
Well,
coffee, and nothing really starts until you
exactly.
have your first cup, right?
Exactly. And that's kind of the bottom line is the the geekiness and the experimentation. Everything kind of is an afternoon thing. When I'm waking up, I just want my coffee. So I also have a Breville espresso maker and that at home, and it's programmed to wake itself up at 6 a.m. so that it's warmed up for me when I wake up. So I go that route, or I have a grinder and everything set up at work too. So we have good coffee brew in there as well. So sometimes I just wait till I get to work.
Okay. And so
Yeah.
you're doing full-time work as well as doing your coffee grinding business or your coffee roasting too. So you must be, how
Yep.
many hours a week are you doing that on top of your regular work?
Well, I recently got a business partner. Her name's Stephanie Bonin. She was a barista in Sudbury and in a few other places around the world, actually. She's originally from Sudbury, and she joined up with me. So before that, I was putting in probably 30 to 40 hours a week on top of my job.
Mm.
And now it's probably a little bit less because I have extra help now. She can be here while I'm at work, and she's great. Big help. She's got the barista side of things down pat. So, I let people ask her those questions
Right. Yeah.
because I've never worked as a barista. So it's like all my own hands-on personal experience stuff and things that she's shown me.
Right.
Do you have some sort of cafe set up where you're at, or is it just the roasting part?
It's just the roasting part for now. This past summer, we moved into a new location that was a lot bigger. So we were able to expand our operation, but it was the coffee shop or cafe wasn't really in the picture yet.
Mm.
So what we have at the front of our building is our health food store from town, Simplicity, and they have a nice coffee maker and they're brewing our coffee there. So it's kind of the next best thing to have in a cafe.
Mm.
Yeah. So
Yeah, because if you got a professional barista doing the coffee, then you're going to get the best representation of the coffee, right?
yeah, exactly. So we kind of went in and helped her get the machine and dial it in for her, and now she gets quite a few people going there buying our coffee and brewed already. And it's nice for us because get here in the morning sometimes and she's already got coffee brewed. So I just stick my hand through the door and she pours my cup. Yeah. So it's convenient. But we also have an espresso maker and everything set up here. Part of Steph's contribution to the business. She had a coffee cart where she does education and events and stuff like that. So this is kind of its permanent home while it's not out and about.
Do you know where she was doing like being a barista like outside of Canada?
I don't remember the exact names, but she was in Australia for a little while, and then she was in Ireland.
Okay.
So she's like a world traveler.
Yeah, the only
So
reason I ask is because my family's from Portugal and I find the coffee scene in
Oh,
Portugal is way different from over here. So I was just curious if
yeah,
she would have some of that experience.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Everywhere you go, there's always differences in that.
Hmm.
Like my wife is from South Korea, and it's a different scene there too.
Hmm.
So they've got 5-story coffee shops next to a 5-story coffee shop next to another 5-story coffee shop. Pretty wild.
Yeah, some cultures are really big on like the cafe culture. Like for
Mhm.
example, when we were in Portugal, there was cafes everywhere, and then all the cafes on top of being cafes usually served food, and then also would serve booze on top of that. And it was like you
Yeah,
could get it anytime you want.
Yeah, and it was just
yeah,
a very relaxed thought. You would just go there, you would talk to everybody, like just very social, like a little bit different
yeah,
than it is here, I would say.
yeah. Where the music's just a little bit too loud that you don't really want to stay too long, and the chairs are not quite comfortable. Yeah, where other places they have it where it's a comfortable place to go. And not saying that everywhere does that, but you get some people that do that in the cities and stuff. So but yeah, I think Australia kind of has that same kind of culture where they do the coffee and the food and the booze. And
Yeah.
you're starting to see some of that in Toronto and I think in Sudbury too, like Salute, I think does some of that.
Yeah, usually the booze ends up in the coffee too. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me too. Kind of not really the same thing, but different.
okay.
Well, I was just thinking about that time we had that coffee there. I can't remember what the hell it was called, but before this particular kind of coffee is consumed, it passes through the digestive tract of
Oh
a
yes.
civet
Yeah.
cat. I don't know if
That's
you've ever
right. It's
tried
called
that before.
Kopi Luwak.
Yeah.
what it's
from
called.
Japan.
Yeah. I've never tried it, but I've heard of it. And a lot of people always ask about that. It's like, yeah, I'd like to try it just to say I've tried it, but I haven't. Yeah, it's hard to find and it's
Mhm.
expensive. So
Yeah, my cousin went to Japan and he brought some back, so we got to try it. It wasn't terrible. It's just
Oh, it was nothing special. I mean, for the price
True.
tag, they said it was. And on top of that, you know that something already ate it.
yeah, that's right. And that's kind of what it boils down to, is that the quality doesn't always reflect the price in that case. It's kind of and there's a lot of forgery with it too. And also some, once they see the price tag, you start putting animals in cages and feeding them coffee instead of naturally out there eating the coffee cherries. So
Yeah, exactly.
you start to get into some of that stuff, and
Yeah, that's
you
not
got some.
not good. That's not exactly what you want to be doing when you're trying to produce things, like, say, in an ethical manner, right? But that's what'll happen, like you said, when you get that price tag involved in there. People say, "Oh, you're going to pay me how much for a kilo of this?" Yeah, I'll go catch a
Yep,
bunch of
that's
these
right.
cats and throw them in a cage, no problem.
That's right. Yeah. So, like I said, there's really good coffee out there without having to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, going back to then how coffee is, say, harvested, you mentioned that you like the specialty coffees. And so
Yep.
would a specialty coffee farm be the same as, say, a mass production farm, or would they be generally separate? Or
Well, not a lot of times they are separate, but in a specialty coffee farm, they could have stuff that funnels to the specialty market, some that, like, because you think it's an agricultural product, so they're going to get some cherries that don't ripen properly, so that stuff can feed into that next channel, like maybe the commodity market where they sell it for C market prices. But then the specialty end is kind of what they're trying to focus on, and then you'll get somewhere it's even the higher end where they might only get one bag of this special coffee that's rated, there's a point system within coffee. So I've only ever heard of anything being like 91 out of 100. So the farm might get one bag of that, and then 80% of the rest of what they get is going to be, in specialty they say 80 points or higher is kind of what a specialty coffee would be. So you're going to get 80% of your coffee coming through that if they're trying for that, and then the rest of it will be whatever's kind of left over didn't meet those criteria. So
okay. And so,
yeah.
like, do you know how they would, say, do the grading system there? Like, what are they looking for that gives it a higher score than, say, a lower score?
Yeah, well, they're looking for coffee free of defects. So you'll get some defects that are insect related, and that where there's little holes in it from the coffee cherry borer, it's called. And I think they go with, I forget the exact number, but I think you're allowed so many defects for every 100 beans or something like that. So, and then they have to be cleaned properly and all that stuff. So you're kind of, I don't know all the exact ins and outs of it, but that's generally what they're trying to do. And they hand sort them, they're drying them on beds. Yeah, it can get pretty elaborate. People sitting there picking out little defects of coffee. Some of them you get are underripe and they're like more sour, or some of them are Quakers, they call them, that seeds that never fully develop properly. So they're like a lighter color when you get them in the coffee. If you taste them on their own, it's like not very good. Kind of tastes like straw or hay or some kind of cardboard. So you want to try to avoid that stuff in your coffee too.
Okay.
That's already all done. By the time I get it, it's already been kind of sorted, and you'll still get the odd Quaker and stuff come through, but you try to hand pick that, but it's not, it's time consuming. So.
Okay. And when it comes to, like, say, the cherries, do they actually use those for anything else, or that's totally just a byproduct?
Well, in general, they, like, up until more recently, they would just take it and put it as compost.
Hmm.
But then there were people kind of demanding to see something else done with it, so they would actually dry them out. And there's a product called cascara, so you can kind of make tea with it or whatever, or use it in fruit bars, or it's kind of like a dried fruit basically. But I don't know, I don't see it too often, so I don't know if it really caught on.
Right.
But I've had a bag of it before, and it was interesting. It wasn't, it's caffeinated tea, kind of, you could kind of make it like that, but it didn't satisfy quite as much as coffee does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine make like energy bar, like granola bar, and put some of that in there. It was good. Kind of tasted like raisins, I guess, but not quite the same. It's hard to describe.
Yeah, it's one of those things you have to really try to kind of know what it tastes like. That sort of makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and some people say it's like jasmine and watermelon, but I never really got that when I tried the stuff that I had. It's kind of more raisiny. So yeah.
Okay. And so the importer you talk to, then that importer, do they put you like say in direct contact with the people you buying the coffee from, or you just go to your importer, you say, hey, let's try this one this time and see how it goes?
Yeah, well, basically they go do the legwork down at the farm. So they go down there and source the coffee, and they have our interests in mind. So if I say I want certain things, they're going to look for that stuff for us. And I could have more influence if I wanted like that, but in general, I'm trusting what they're doing. So it's kind of like the closest to a direct trade model that I can really do, because it's also like I don't sell enough to have a relationship with a bunch of different farmers, because it sounds good, but it also has some liabilities in that with it. Say that I'm expecting a certain quality of coffee, and then something happens where they get too much rain or drought or something like that, and the coffee is lesser of a quality, then I can just say, no, I'm not taking that. And that's totally unfair, right? So with an importer who's kind of directly dealing with them, they have the ability to kind of absorb some of that. They'd be like, yeah, I can still take that coffee, and I have people that will buy that. So it's kind of the best that I can do right now.
Yeah, well, especially with something like coffee. I mean, it's not something we exactly grow here, right? It's a little bit different than people we normally talk to who are doing things that you can locally produce here. But it's definitely one of those things that's certainly locally enjoyed. And I think like it wasn't as apparent to me when I was younger, but certainly as I got older into my teens, I noticed that Canada does have a coffee culture. It's not the same sort of coffee culture as anywhere else in the world. It's more of a grab your Timmies and go kind of coffee culture. And as much as you can fit in the cup, please. But
yeah, that's changing. You're getting a lot more people enjoying finer quality coffees, and that's kind of nice. And I like to feel like I had some part of that in my town, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly really good coffee, and I do like the fact that I'd rather have it someone close to here who's roasting it than someone way far off too, because it is still a part of the community kind of thing, right?
Yeah, for sure. And roast, like after you roast it, there is a life after that where it starts to fade, the quality starts to fade. So you kind of want to get it as fresh as you can to enjoy it. If you want to be real picky, like within a month of roasting it, you kind of want to do that. But after even 2 months, it still tastes quite good. It's just starting to fade, So depends on how picky you want to be with it.
Yeah.
And I've pulled coffee off the shelf. I've pulled coffee off the shelf after 6 months, like our holiday blend, after the first year, and drank it, and it was still really good. Just wasn't as good.
Yeah.
So
then when you get into doing like your roasting and stuff like that, is there like any times you'll do like say a blend of different beans and mix them together, or is it always going to be like sort of one kind of bean?
No, we have definitely a few coffees that we blend beans together with. So our hometown blend, we do like a pre-blend, pre-roast blend, they call it. So we blend a couple different coffees together and then roast it. And something like our northern, we roast two different coffees separately and then blend it after. So that's like a post-roast blend. And then the other ones are like single origin, Colombia, Brazil, stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay. And so, like, why would you say choose to do either a pre-blend roast or say a post-blend roast when you're doing a mix?
Well, yeah, for the pre-blend one, we do it because we're trying to get it to a medium roast. So that's like we're able to pre-blend it before, and then we're just taking it all to the same level. Where say our northern coffee, we do the Brazil more into the medium dark end, and we do the other component of that one to a medium roast, and then we blend it. So then we call it like a medium dark. You could just pre-blend and take it to medium dark, but I find you're losing some of the character of the coffee when you get a little darker. So we wanted to have more of a medium. We wanted to satisfy that darker coffee that people wanted, but also have some brightness from the medium roast and some of the flavor. So I think we achieved that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I found too, as I drank more coffee, I found I tended more towards dark roast as I got drinking coffee more. I do have some of your medium roast right now, and it's really good though.
Yeah. Yeah, and the darker coffee satisfies certain things, but it starts to become just the character starts to fade a little bit on it. Like you're enjoying the roast more than the coffee almost. And I don't want to say that in a negative way because people like what they like and it's nostalgic. Coffee is a very nostalgic thing, and I get people telling me all kinds of stuff about what they like, and I was down in Costa Rica and I had the best coffee ever. Generally that's all about the experience of being on the beach having a cup of coffee, but you can't really say you had the best cup of coffee.
Yeah,
It kind of doesn't exist.
well, yeah, exactly, right, because it's only ever something that you yourself will enjoy, that particular cup from that particular cafe on that particular day, right?
Exactly. And if you're sitting on a beach in Costa Rica, it's going to be a really good cup of coffee.
Yeah.
No.
That makes me think of the movie Elf when you see on the window best cup of coffee in the world.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember that. We watched that with my son at Christmas this year and I laughed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those ones that became one of those quick classics.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So how much coffee you drink in a day? I would think that a person who roasts coffee must drink a lot, but
Well, I don't drink a crazy amount. I'm still in like the 3 cup a day range because anything after that, I start getting overly caffeinated. Still have the normal human chemistry. So yeah, I know people that drink a lot more than I do. Let's just say that.
well, yeah, me too.
As I'm getting a little.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, as I get older too, that number, the time of the day starts having an effect. Or before, I could drink it at 10 o'clock at night and go to bed right after. Now it doesn't quite work that way, and I've always been told that from other people, but starting to feel it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that is the thing with coffee. They say if you drink it too close to bedtime, it affects how well you sleep and all that kind of stuff. And that's one of those things too that I think we're learning a lot more now about, say, as a culture, where it's like sleep is really important, and then you don't really think about that coffee really affecting you because you think, oh, well, I went to sleep, right? And it's like, but not the same quality of sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and your dreams are more vivid and all this stuff, and it's a bit lighter of a sleep. So yeah, I've experienced all that too. But my wife, it doesn't seem to have an effect on her. She can drink it anytime.
Well, yeah, because when we have family dinners, we have espressos after dinner. And my dad doesn't affect him at all. He falls asleep on the couch right after drinking an espresso. And Jordan during the week, now he's not having one in the evening because then it just messes with your sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and actually, like having an espresso is probably your best option too, because it's been generally thought like it's way more caffeine than a regular coffee, but it's actually less caffeine because it takes like 3 shots of espresso to equal 1 cup of coffee for caffeine wise. So that's why, the Italians and Portuguese, they'll have it after just enough to get them through the rest of the night,
Yeah.
So I think it's about 60 grams of caffeine, or milligrams, sorry, not grams.
Yeah.
In a shot of espresso. So it's
Yeah,
kind of a
that's
nice little.
that's like the opposite of what I would have thought too, because you think it's more like concentrated almost is what you would think, and then you would think a longer cup would be a little more diluted. But I guess if you're doing like say a drip or something like that, there's more time that the water is spending in contact with the actual bean, which is probably going to take more of the caffeine out.
Exactly. So you're getting a lot more concentration of coffee solids and particles in an espresso, but the caffeine is actually still less. So, for example, like a regular brewed cup of coffee is approximately 1.25% coffee solids, and then the rest is water, where an espresso is kind of in the 10% range, and then the rest being water. So it's a lot more concentrated. It feels like you're getting something stronger and you're getting a stronger taste, but caffeine is actually less.
Okay. Yeah, and that's another thing I didn't think about too, is like say the amount of actual particles of coffee you're getting when you're making your coffee. Because that's one thing I notice for sure when I make my cup of coffee in the morning is I'll get a little bit of grind in the bottom of the cup. And I always just kind of figured it was, well, I never really thought about it too much, I guess. I just kind of looked at it and said, oh, okay, right on, by the sink.
Yeah. Well, and if you drink that, it's more caffeine. So I don't know if you guys have ever had Turkish coffee.
No.
It's basically like they take they have a little just a little brewer, and they basically put water with some coffee that's ground like baby powder, and then they kind of bring it close to a boil and then take it off the heat and let it do that a couple times until it's done. Then you pour it right into these little cups that are kind of similar size to espresso cups, and then you're supposed to allow the sediment to go to the bottom, and then you drink what's on the top. So I made the mistake the first time I had one of mixing it and drinking it. So I had a clean cup at the end, and I was caffeinated pretty hard. So, yeah.
Well, I've never had that before, but it makes me think of a Cuban coffee, because I think Cubans are supposed to have really strong coffee too. I wonder if that's a similar thing they do.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I know the coffee itself from Cuba is usually just kind of normal coffee, but I don't know if they have a brewing method that would be stronger like that. So yeah, if you get grinds in the bottom of your cup, most people see that and they think it's gross, but drink it up.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to drink the water that runs through the beans, what's the difference exactly? The only thing you don't want to have is coffee beans in your teeth when you're going around at work.
Or in your mustache.
Yeah, that's right.
Or in your mustache.
Yeah. Well, if you got that many grinds, you probably did something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that makes me think of coffee grinds. I used them in cooking before, and I thought that was pretty good. Like you use them kind of as a dry rub after you ground them down, and it's a nice kind of coffee flavor or whatever it is you're cooking.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen that too on some cooking shows I've watched, and I've yet to try it, but I would like to try it and see how that works. You're probably going to get some caffeine out of that. That would be my guess. Well, I don't know if they're using a darker roast or a lighter roast, so I have to look into that.
Yeah, I think the kind I used at the time was probably I think I might have made it for you when you come down to visit me.
I don't think so.
No, it might have been it was around the same time as I made those waffles. That's why I thought maybe it was the same thing.
Yeah, no, I never had your
Well, anyways, yeah, I remember I think it was just Maxwell House is what I used.
Probably.
And it was some kind of a barbecue kind of recipe.
Okay.
And so it made sense to me because I thought like maybe the coffee roast, maybe give it kind of like not smoky, but it kind of, in my mind, I thought the flavor would go with barbecue. Like it just kind of made sense.
Yeah, it does make sense actually. So, and there are people doing that. Can't think of anyone offhand, but definitely people doing that. So, Yeah.
We'll have to try it again.
Yeah. Or tried for the first time, I guess, anyways. Yeah, no, I thought I made
You don't remember enough.
I thought I made it for
Don't
you.
remember.
Me, so what's that, sorry?
I was gonna say we don't remember it enough to know, so it'll be like the first time.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And now
Well, and if we're using different coffee beans than Maxwell House, that'll make a big difference anyways. If we're using, say, good beans like from Espanola here.
Yeah. So I would kind of almost think that a lighter coffee might work better because it's got a little bit more room to cook because it's on the lighter end. I don't know, just a thought.
That makes sense too, because you might be almost overcooking the coffee, especially if you're doing a dry rub on the outside.
Yeah, if it's a darker roast, that might. It's kind of my my thought on that anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And then it would be interesting too if you were doing it on something, if you do it on the outside or do a part on the inside, because then if you do it on the outside and you're cooking it for a long time, like roasting it, you're probably going to burn almost all the coffee flavor out of the bean on the outside. Because like, as you said, when you roast it more, you're going to lose some of that flavor, right? So doing that light roast makes sense where you would preserve more of the actual coffee flavor. And then maybe as it cooks, it comes into a more dark roast kind of flavor anyway.
Yeah. And you probably want to, I would assume you'd want to let it sit for a little while too to kind of absorb some of that flavor, just like you would if you're putting salt and pepper on it, you know, put it on an hour before you cook it or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Might have to try that tomorrow.
Oh, you'll have to let us know how it goes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then you get other people making soap and stuff with it, which is cool. It's like adds a little grit to the soap to help you clean. You kind of have to make sure that you're grinding it to the right size though, because I've had one, and I don't know the brand, and I would never say the brand anyway, but it was pretty coarsely ground, and it hurt.
Yeah, you want it to be kind of like a pumice stone. You don't want it to be like sandpaper, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it makes me think too. I wonder, like, if people were using it as like a facial scrub, not necessarily that it would go through your skin, but maybe like just the smelling of it. When say you rub it on your face, maybe like it'd wake you up in the morning, kind of thing.
Yeah, you never know.
Start doing that.
Well, I was just thinking now, maybe I'm not getting enough coffee in the morning. I could start rubbing it into my face. Maybe I could take a sniff of it before I go out the door.
Yeah. So many possibilities with good minds.
Yeah, well, I mean,
just drink.
so go ahead.
Just drink the grinds. You'll be good.
That's what I should do there. Well, because when you got the cake that's done at the end there, you just throw that in the cup and away you go.
Yeah.
That probably wouldn't be it. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's all kinds of stuff people put coffee in too. Like you can get coffee candies and coffee cake and all that kind of stuff. Coffee cake, I wonder, they must be using coffee grinds in there directly too, just like you would. I mean, where else would you get the flavor from, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Not sure about that one. I thought it might have been something to do with just having it with coffee, but yeah, I don't know.
Might be that too.
I haven't thought of that.
None of us have made it.
No, exactly. I've only ever eaten
I've
it.
never made it. Yeah, that's right. Cool. Yeah. Well, I was talking earlier about some of the processing methods too. I could talk a little bit about that if you're interested.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because so they're picking the cherries by hand at the farm, and then they're taking them back in sacks. A lot of places it's grown in the mountains, right? So you're getting higher quality coffee at higher elevations. So they're literally picking them by hand, taking them back with them in whatever vehicle they can get to where they're getting to. Sometimes it's just a bike or they're carrying it. So they take it back and then they depulp it. So they take the seeds out of the cherry. And then in order for that to happen, in order for to get the coffee out of that, like, I know you guys are farmers and stuff like that too. So have you ever tried saving seed?
Yeah, we're not quite farmers. We're more gardeners, but we do
gardeners,
save our seeds. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, say that you get tomato seeds and they're kind of slimy and you have to leave them in a bucket with water to ferment for, say, a day or two.
Yeah.
And then that stuff just washes off. And then you can dry it out. Well, that's how coffee is too. So you have to put it in water and let it sit there for a day or two and ferment, and then that stuff will just kind of come off. And then you go and wash it again later, and then you take it and you put it into drying beds. Some places dry it on the ground. It depends on where you're getting it and the climate. So then that dries for a couple of weeks, and then it's ready to kind of go to the next stage. So they call that a wash process coffee. Then when you get into, say, Ethiopia and some other places, more places are trying to do it now and experimenting, but you're getting a natural process. So they let it dry inside of the cherry. And then afterwards, they take it out of the cherry once it's dried. So you're getting more of a fruitier kind of flavored coffee because it's imparted some of that characteristic into it from the cherry. Then when you roast that, you can get some pretty interesting flavors. So, like say we have an Ethiopian coffee, it kind of tastes like strawberry jam almost. And that's at a really, like a light roasted Ethiopian. And then you can get like blueberries. There's all kinds of different ones, and they're experimenting more and more with different processes too. So I'm not fully in the loop in all of them anymore, but I used to know all of them up until a couple of years ago. So those are kind of the two main ones, washed and natural. So yeah, when you get into the lighter roasts, you can get some of those different flavor characteristics profiles.
I don't think we've ever bought light roast coffee.
Maybe one time. Yeah, we bought it a couple times. We bought from what's it called across from the arena there?
Old Rock.
Old Rock, yeah. Yeah, we tried. I think it was light roast we got from there one time. Okay. Yeah, but it was only one time. Usually we buy darker.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing with like labeling it light, medium, dark, and that is that it's not really a standard to go by. So one person's light roast could be somebody's medium dark. You know, like say if you go to a Starbucks or something, like their blonde is their lightest coffee, and it's darker than our hometown. So it's interesting to see that. So when you're into the specialty range and you're going into a specialty shop and you see a light roast, it's going to be very light. And that's kind of nicer to drink black. It doesn't always mix well with cream and sugar because there's more acidity in the lighter end. So there's a fine line there, especially if you're trying to do it with, like if you take a light roast and do espresso with it, there's a fine line as to what's going to taste good and not. So, but it's definitely, if you get that sweet spot, it's very nice.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like anything, right? You got to kind of dabble in it a little bit, try it, and see what you really kind of like.
Yeah.
Like we like coffee too, but like we like, so if we get someone that does it like how you do it, like we'll just kind of try whatever it is you make. Like we usually find someone we like who does what we like, and then we'll just kind of we'll try out the different flavors of that. And then, you know, if you're like the only guy in the area, then we're just gonna keep buying your coffee.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we don't really put the light roast out or anything. It's kind of more of a specialty thing. Like you can order it on our website. Okay. I've had it before where people have bought it and didn't really like it because it wasn't what they were expecting. And then they want to return it and stuff like that. Then it just creates kind of a headache. So the people that know what they want, they can order it from there, or you can try it, experiment with it. So
most of the beans, say, that you sell, do you sell them directly to someone who's going to sell them in bulk, say, or do you sell them lots to coffee shops, or a fair mix?
I would say the bulk of our orders are now like through the grocery stores, which is great. We have other places too that are like health food stores and just some regular people ordering it themselves online. So that's kind of the main mix. Yeah, the grocery stores are kind of the big ticket item for us. It just helps. It's just everyone goes there, right? So even if you're you know, even if you're a bit of a coffee snob or whatever, you can still grab some there, and it's nice to have a high quality option at the grocery store.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a lot easier. It's more available. Like it's easier to kind of get your hands on. You don't have to go to a specialty shop. You can get it while you're getting your groceries or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. And we tried to keep the price as low as we can so that it wouldn't scare people away from trying it. And then when they try it, they usually really like it. So it's great. And that's a lot to do with, you know, we're doing a good job with roasting, because you can not do a very good job too with it. But a lot of the key is getting high quality coffee from the farm. So thankfully they're doing their part by creating good coffee, and then I can take it and try not to screw it up. So
well, you are doing a good
then,
job from what I've had there for sure. It's definitely tasty
well, thanks
stuff.
a lot.
And
Well,
so we're at our end of our time here. How about you tell people where they could get a hold of your product, or order it, where they could get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, we have our online stores. We're in probably about 20 different locations now. So in and around Sudbury, Espanola, we're as far as Elliott Lake, Blind River, and we're kind of making our way south now too. So a lot of the independent grocers, the Nickel Refillery in Sudbury has it. Simplicity Naturals here in town, Espanola. Yeah, basically that, and then online. So yeah, that's basically where we're at.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Right,
no
you.
problem. Yeah, well, thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I've been watching other podcasts of yours, and it's good. Keep it up.
Well, thanks. We're trying to help reach out to you guys and help you guys do what you want to do.
Awesome.
All right, take care.
Well, you guys take care.
Yeah.
Okay.